What's up guys, Intellitech Studios here, and today we'll be doing the full review on the Bissell 9-amp upright. Now this particular machine is also branded as a Singer or as a Kenmore in certain places, but most people probably know this as a Bissell or a Singer. This particular one is the Bissell branded version, but it is in fact manufactured by Singer. It's a much older machine, and it's, a legacy Bissell. This is what the serial sticker looks like. This particular one is from the 197th day of 1998, and it is, in fact, 9 amps. So, this particular Bissell is the model number 3510-9. Now, this one I just sold to another vacuum collector, but that part's not important. What is important is that this particular machine is very similar to a Hoover Elite or a Eureka Bravo. However, this machine does have some differences between those two. Of course, the general design is nearly identical, but it does have some advantages and disadvantages. The biggest advantage to this design is that there are a couple parts that are actually built better than those machines. The biggest one, right off the bat, is the power switch. This has the exact same rocker-style power switch that a lot of the newer Bissells and a lot of other machines have. And I don't think anyone's going to argue that this standard universal power switch that almost never breaks, I don't think anyone's going to argue that that's somehow worse than the horrible foot pedal solution on the Eureka Bravos or the very convoluted setup for the power switch on the Hoover Elites with a lot of extra pegs and pins that have to push basically the exact same switch on the inside, only way more complicated. I'd rather just have a basic switch that I can just flip, and that always works. So that is definitely nice, because I think in the entire time that I've used these Bissells with these types of switches, I don't think I've ever seen one go bad. So power switch on this is very good, and that's kind of a really good important thing, because if the power switch on your machine goes bad, then you can't really use it, can you? So that's definitely an advantage right there for the Bissell. Another advantage is the actual back spine is made out of metal, at least the actual handle portion of it is. This rest of this is plastic, but the handle part is metal. So it's built very well, and it's very tough, and it actually feels very good in terms of quality. And ironically, even though later Bissells that came out about a few years after this machine did, even though a lot of those Bissells have issues with the pedal release breaking, this pedal release is very similar to an Elite, but this particular machine does not have the same issue with motor mounts that the Elite does. So that's also a really good feature. So a lot of the aspects of the build are better than equivalent machines at the time. Although there is one little interesting thing, and that's the fact that the handle just pops right off. So this part is removable for some reason. So you can just have a standard metal tube. It's very clearly just a metal pipe that's been bent to the right shape. So pretty interesting. And of course this does just slide right back on there. A little tricky to get, but just slides right back on. Reminds me of some of the Panasonics that have issues with their handles just kind of falling off. So, but at least that gives it a nice grip. So whenever you are using this, it's very easy to push and pull. Because of the metal handle, it's not quite as light as an Elite, but it's very close. And it's exactly just as maneuverable and lightweight, with an empty bag at least, as the equivalent Featherlights, Bravos, and Elites. Now, much like a lot of the Elites, you can push the pedal a second time to get underneath low furniture. But of course, the way that the bag puffs up whenever you use it does kind of get in the way. Now, this is a soft bag setup. You have a zipper, very similar to the Bravos, where you just undo this, and then you have your bag right in there. Now, this uses Bissell style 2 bags, which you can still sometimes find, but Hoover A bags do work as well, and they do fit as well. Now, the Bissell style Y bags that came with the liftoff and the power forces and all that, those do work in here, but they're a little bit too short, so I wouldn't really recommend them, because whenever they fill up, that's putting extra stress on the bag collar. One thing I don't like about this design is because of the zipper and there not really being any way to open up the sides, it's very awkward to get a bag out and put one in. So that's definitely something that they did address on the hard bagged units, like the Bissell Pure Air and the later Power Glides and Power Forces. So a lot of people like soft bags, but for me personally, I always prefer a hard bag machine, even if it does make it weigh a little bit more. Plus, in my house, a soft bag isn't very good because there's a certain cat Hi, Boot. There's a certain cat that really particularly enjoys scratching up soft bags on vacuums, so I gotta be a little bit careful when I store soft bag vacuums downstairs. But that's not really the machine's fault, so it is what it is. But that is something to keep in mind. Another thing is that this is a direct air machine, and as typical direct air machines at the time, it's extremely loud. And the only time this machine is even tolerable to listen to is when the bag is packed full and it functions as a sort of sound dampening. When the bag is empty, though, this thing is a screamer, and it's not pleasant to listen to at all. Although, it does clean very well. The brush roll design on this is actually really good. So, unlike newer Bissells that have issues with the bearings on their brush rollers, this brush roll is fantastic, and that's probably where the Singer roots really shine. We've got a wooden brush roll with really nice, stiff black bristles, and easily removable end caps, and user changeable and serviceable bearings, which is definitely a really nice design. And unlike the Elites, you don't need to remove any top covers to get the actual base plate off. You just have two tabs right here that you just undo, and the base plate comes off, and you get access to the belt and the brush roller, just like a Power Force. So that's really good. Hi, Rika. We also have our attachment peg right here. So much like the higher end Elites, we've got a high setting, a low setting, and a setting all the way to the left that diverts the suction to the attachments, which is a little hard to select on my unit, but it is theoretically an option. Now on my unit, the actual hose and tools are missing, so I can't really review the hose or tools, but they attach right here, very similar to an Elite. And they do have tool pegs and storage hooks for the hose and the attachments should they exist. I believe this peg might be broken. Yeah, I don't know, it looks a little funny to me, but I'm unfamiliar with that. But if that was a problem, it wouldn't really have any issues holding the hose anyways. You do have a standard 25-foot cord, so no 30 feet, but fairly typical of a machine of this style. It is longer than some of the Elites that I have, like the Soft and Light, so there is a bit of an advantage there. And one thing that's really nice is there's a very clear and obvious sticker on the back telling you exactly what belts and bags you need. A lot of other machines, they kind of hide this information by having it molded into the plastic, but since it's black on black, you oftentimes can't see it. In fact, you can see an example of that where it says this end down. Most people aren't going to be able to see that, and that's where a lot of these companies will put that information in a little molded piece like this. This is a lot better because anyone can see right on the back what type of belt they need and what type of bag they need. This is a Bissell Style 2 machine, so it uses Style 2 belts and Style 2 bags. Style 2 belts you can still thankfully easily find, so finding belts for this machine is not a problem, nor is finding bags a problem, because you can still sometimes find Style 2 bags, but even if you can't, it doesn't matter because Hoover Type A's work fine, and Hoover Type A bags are still perfectly easy to find. So all that is definitely good, although finding a brush roll or finding some other extraneous part is probably going to be difficult to find for this machine. If your machine is physically in good condition and it just needs a tune-up, I did do a video on this, which I'll link in the description. This is actually a very simple machine to keep running. And unlike a lot of the Elites of the time, this particular machine did not need a fan, which is good because fans are not something you're going to be able to find for this machine, at least not to my knowledge. So, with that said, the general consensus on this machine is, well, hardly anything, because these machines are pretty rare nowadays. Now, even though I'm a big fan of Bissell, I personally still don't like this machine, because I still would prefer using an Elite over this, especially since this one doesn't have any tools anyways, although that's not really the machine's fault. But if I'm going to grab a direct air machine of this style with no tools, I'm going to grab my Elite 350 every single time, or maybe even an Auric. So it just didn't really make any sense for me to keep this machine, especially with this little blemish on the front, which is unfortunate. So the build quality of the hood is not nearly as good as the Elites, even if the build quality on the cord, the bag, the handle, the power switch, and some other parts of the machine are in fact better than its Elite contemporaries. You know, there's some give and take there. So if you were buying one of these back in the day, would I say to pick up a Bissell over a Hoover if you're comparing this to an equivalent Elite model? Honestly, no. I would probably say go with the Elite, but you could definitely go with this as an acceptable alternative to both the Elites, Bravos, and impulses slash feather lights, because it does have some of those advantages, like the better power switch, like the little bit more robust fan, and the general nicer to service brush roller. So, but again, that's not really Bissell's credit, that's more so Singer's credit. But you could also argue that the Bissells that a lot of times you see nowadays, like the newer Power Forces, you could argue that that's made by a different company entirely, as Bissell often doesn't make a lot of their own machines, believe it or not. So you could be forgiven for giving Bissell credit on this front. But yeah, we do have a soft bumper right here, which does a good job at not marking furniture. And like a lot of vacuums of this time, edge cleaning is fairly non-existent. But main carpet cleaning is excellent. It cleans very well, it grooms very well, you can hear it hitting the carpet, very similar to what you'd find on a newer Bissell, and overall, it just works. The problem is of course, like a lot of machines of this era, it's very loud, the tool suction isn't that good, and it's pretty much useless on bare floors. But you probably knew that already. So, like I said, if I was buying one of these back in the day, I'd probably be tempted to go the Elite route, but this one still would have been a good machine. Now, if you're trying to figure out whether or not to use one of these today, the answer is probably no, unless of course you're a vacuum collector and you're thinking about trying one of these and maybe seeing about broadening your portfolio. Then yeah, it's definitely very interesting, and I do find this machine much more interesting than an Elite, a Bravo, or even an Impulse. But at the end of the day, I'm never going to use it, so there's not really a point in keeping it in the collection, even though I am still very happy to have had it. This will be going to Arbach Lever, so you'll be seeing this on his channel, and that's pretty much that. We'll go ahead and plug it in and give it a quick run. Alrighty, so that's the Bissell 9 amp upright, and yeah, this thing is obscenely loud. I just had to have earbuds in so that way I could actually listen to it, and it still was a little unpleasant. One interesting project that I'm thinking about undertaking is actually reviewing different earplugs to see which ones are the best at cutting out the noise of vacuums, for that, so that way whenever you want to use a collectible direct air machine that, well, cleans good but is very loud, maybe there's a certain set of earplugs that might work good. But in the meantime, just using some normal in-ear style earbuds do cut out on the sound a good fair amount. So they're not actual noise canceling earbuds or actual earplugs, but they definitely make a big difference, because with those in, this machine is actually kind of tolerable to use. Because again, it's lightweight, it cleans well, it's just too loud. And that's a big problem with all these direct air machines. Because if noise was not a factor, I'd love this thing. And honestly, like every machine, the second I sell it, I deeply regret it. So, kind of wish I had kept this, but too late. I already sold it. So, that's that. So, hopefully, Arbok Lover will enjoy this machine, and that's pretty much that. This is Intellitech Studios signing out with my full in-depth review of the Bissell 9-amp upright. It's definitely a great machine, and if you can get your hands on one, then I definitely recommend it. Although again, like every machine of this style from the 90s, it's very loud, so be sure to protect your ears accordingly. So anyways, this is Intellitech Studios signing out. See you guys in the next video, and I hope you all have a good one. Peace. Alright, now that we're done with the toys, it's time to use a real vacuum. And with this one, I don't need earplugs. Take that, Bissell.